Thank you so much, Provost Garrett, for sharing all of the work on the SDGs going on at Carnegie Mellon University. It's wonderful to see you again, and congratulations again on being the first university to conduct a university-wide SDG review. My name is Elizabeth Cousens. I'm the president and CEO of the United Nations Foundation. And it is just remarkable to hear from so many voices, sectors, and communities from across the United States about not only how people are embracing the Sustainable Development Goals, but more importantly, how people are using them in very practical ways to address the challenges and aspirations most relevant to local communities. You know, next week will mark the 5-year anniversary of the SDGs. And I don't think 5 years ago, when the goals were coming together, that we would have dared hope that the framework would have so much resonance across so many diverse constituencies here in the United States and obviously globally, even if we obviously still have so far to go. COVID-19, the climate emergency, the urgency of tackling systemic racism and inequity, all of these challenges and so many more that are so acute only reinforce the underlying urgency of the SDGs. The whole logic of the goals, as you all know, was to tackle deep, underlying, interconnected challenges across our societies, economies, and natural systems that were creating or accentuating pressing vulnerabilities in all of our communities, and to tackle them with new ambition and urgency. The SDGs are universal. They are interconnected. They are profoundly about the real issues that matter to real people in real places, as much here in the United States as anywhere else. And at the heart of all of them, at the moral heart of the SDGs, is that commitment to leave no one behind. That commitment could not be more urgent today as the pandemic upends lives and accentuates inequities that, in fact, have been leaving people and whole communities behind for years, for generations, whether that comes from racism, from broken justice systems, the climate emergency, health threats, gender discrimination, or the brutal intersection of all of the above. You know, we have such a tantalizing future ahead of us if we can summon the imagination and solidarity to seize it in ways that we've just been hearing about already. But we have so much at risk, including hard-won progress and resilience that so many communities have fought to achieve. And we also know that progress will require diversity of leadership, diversity of innovation and action. And that's among the many reasons that I am just delighted that we will now turn to discuss the very rich experience of and leadership of the state of Hawaii. Hawaii was a leader on the SDGs even before there were SDGs and has been a real pathbreaker both in the United States and globally. So I'm therefore extremely honored to be able to introduce the governor of Hawaii, David Ige, to tell us about Hawaii's experience with sustainability and the SDGs, including conducting the first ever statewide review of progress. Welcome, Governor Ige, and over to you.
Aloha. Mahalo for the opportunity to join you virtually all the way from Hawaii. I'm honored to be joining today's speakers in recognizing American leadership advancing the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals during the 75th UN General Assembly. The world has changed dramatically since we last convened to mark our progress on climate action and sustainability. We are all confronted with the challenge of COVID-19. It is a wake-up call that we are a globalized society where our actions have direct impact on each other. We see the challenges of collective action to make the needed changes to respond to this pandemic. Our actions can ensure that we emerge stronger, more equitable, and more resilient. Hawaii is committed to doing its part to achieve these global goals through consistent engagement with our local community and the international community, especially our partners in the Pacific region. We are the most isolated and most populated island community on the planet, 2,500 miles from the nearest landmass, and we see the impacts of climate change and sea level rise in a very real way, from hurricanes to wildfires, coral bleaching, king tides, and flooding rains. These impacts are happening each and every day. So, as an island economy, sustainability is not simply a goal, it's a responsibility. Or, as we say in Hawaii, it is our kuleana. We are connected to everything that we do, connected as a family, connected to our neighbors, and connected to our environment. Knowing this, we must go beyond merely caring for what exists now. We must protect the environment for our children, for their future. In Hawaii, we embarked on a journey to define a common set of goals for our many stakeholders to become more sustainable. We brought state and local government, our federal partners, businesses, nonprofits, community organizations, all together to identify common goals and the metrics we would agree to pursue them. Together, we identified goals on clean energy, local food production, watershed protection, invasive species control, green workforce and education, and smart, sustainable communities grounded in incorporating our host culture's values and over 1,000 years of indigenous wisdom and practices. We call this effort the Aloha Plus Challenge to push ourselves to achieve these goals with aloha. And as a state senator in 2014, I sponsored the bill endorsing and supporting the Aloha Plus Challenge. As governor in 2016, I was honored to host the International Union for Conservation of Nature's World Conservation Congress here in Hawaii. With over 10,000 delegates from 192 countries, my administration set the stage to place Hawaii at the forefront of sustainability with the Sustainable Hawaii Initiative. Hawaii was the first state to enact a law that aligns with the Paris Agreement and the first state in the country to commit to 100% clean renewable energy for electricity by 2045, which many other states like California soon followed. We also have committed to protecting 30% of our priority watersheds because we know that fresh water starts in our watersheds. We've committed to effectively managing 30% of our nearshore waters with established management areas. And we've committed to protecting our rich biodiversity against invasive species through the first comprehensive biosecurity strategy, because if left unchecked, it could cost billions of dollars in economic losses. Now, as a recognized local 2030 hub, Hawaii is taking action on the global goals through our local SDG framework, the Aloha Plus Challenge, and is measuring our progress through an open data dashboard with community driven metrics and indicators to hold ourselves accountable. This year, I'm proud Hawaii will be the first US state to report our progress on the UN Sustainable Development Goals through our voluntary local review, which includes the work of our counties, businesses, and local community. This first of its kind report can help raise the bar for local SDG leadership across the United States and the world. And we are glad to join other cities and nations globally in taking this important step. These are our core sustainability goals. And with the economic impacts that we are experiencing from COVID 19, we are doubling down on our clean energy economy, protecting our natural resources, creating green jobs and education pathways, and building smarter, more sustainable communities. While we look to chart where we go post COVID, having the voluntary local review gives us the opportunity to reflect on what we have accomplished to date, take our bearings, and chart a course for a better Hawaii that we all want to see, as I'm sure other leaders like yourselves are doing. As we all know, The climate crisis is here and affects all of us, and we must find ways to come together. The United Nations is that promise. The SDGs are our common language. Through the alignment of local, state, national, and international action, we can align our canoes in the same direction to help each other arrive at a more sustainable, equitable world for all of us. Mahalo for this opportunity to share these thoughts with you today. Aloha.
Thank you so much, Governor Ige, for your leadership, for your example, and for that powerful metaphor of the SDGs as a common language. I think that's incredibly important and resonates throughout this whole conversation. I'm very pleased now to welcome the US Senator for Hawaii, Brian Schatz, for a conversation about Hawaii's work on the SDGs and its efforts to build a sustainable recovery from the pandemic from the local to the federal level. Welcome, Senator Schatz.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for what you're doing.
Well, Senator, let me start by asking you, the SDGs at their core are about solving our greatest challenges together and ensuring that no one is left behind. How do you see the value of the SDGs for Americans, for Hawaiians, and why is American leadership on the SDGs at home and globally so important?
Well, the first, let me take the last part of your question. The reason America has to lead is because America has to continue to be the indispensable nation. It is just a fact that what we do, for better or worse, is something that is followed all around the planet. The way I view the SDGs and how they've been useful to the state of Hawaii and especially the city and county of Honolulu is to kind of understand, now they use the word intersectional a lot. It's not a word we use in the state of Hawaii very much, but it is a sort of continental United States way to understand something we already know, which is that we're all in the same canoe. And if we're not paddling in unison, we will all go in circles. And so pitting housing against environment or pitting economic development versus clean energy is exactly the wrong way to look at things. And so what we've been able to do through SDGs and through some of our efforts, especially the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, is to sort of reposition some of these issues as economic development opportunities. A good friend of mine always says, paint a picture and paint me in it. It is not enough for us to think about our goals relative to climate in the abstract in terms of how many degrees Fahrenheit we can bend that curve down. It has to work for people, and the SDGs try to ensure that policymakers and people in a position of authority execute in a way that works for everybody.
No, thank you. I love that metaphor too of painting people into the picture. These goals are really mostly about being relevant to real people and meaningful in their day-to-day lives. Well, let me ask you about COVID and the recovery from COVID and all of the conversations underway about how we build back differently and better. You were a founder of the Hawaii Green Growth Local 2030 Hub, which predated the SDGs, and your work with different sectors is a real model for how we can bring these different lines of effort together. As you think about response to the pandemic, how does that experience shape your priorities for recovery, and how do you see the SDGs playing into that?
Well, I think we want to make sure to meet people where they're at, which is to say they don't have a lot of headspace and we don't have a lot of capital for truly transformational reform efforts in the middle of this absolute emergency as it relates to people being hungry and homeless. And so I don't know how this aligns with sort of what the expectations are with respect to what I was expected to say. But I think it's really important for us to remember that if we start to talk about reform efforts that sound a little too pie in the sky, then we're going to lose traction. And one of the beauties of the SDGs. Okay, other people can hear us both, so that's good.
Okay.
Why don't we do this? Because I have a committee hearing in 7 or so minutes, I will just wrap up with the following. We started the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative around the same time as the Hawaii Green Growth Initiative. And one of the things that we got from folks in the business community was that, you're going to destroy the reliability of power, you're going to destroy Hawaii's economy. And then you got from the other side, hey, this isn't enough. This is a planetary emergency. And what we did was we sort of kept our heads down and just grinded at that, against that goal. And we started with a very weak clean energy goal of 10%, and it was actually voluntary. And then we found that we hit the goal. And so we went to 20% and made it mandatory. And then as Governor Ige said, then we went to 40%. And now we're at 100% clean energy. And we have cheaper energy than we had when we first started the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. And so one of the things that I'm most proud of with respect to the SDGs, with Hawaii Green Growth, and with respect to the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, is that we've found a way to make these priorities actually work for folks. And now we have the Hawaii Chamber of Commerce, the Waikiki Hotel Association, and everybody else saying, yes, we should reach 100% clean energy. And so the purpose of SDGs and the purpose of leadership in this context is to make sure that this works for everybody as we're moving towards these global goals and each play our part. So thank you. And I'm sorry I couldn't hear you, but I hope that was helpful.
It was superb. Thank you, Senator Schatz. I know you can't understand what I'm saying or hear me at the moment, but others can hear. Thank you for bringing up the energy example again, because that is such a powerful story and it's a model that others could follow. Thank you for your grace under technological pressure. And really thank you for joining us when I know your time is short and you have pressing duties.